I remember the girl because I was enchanted. She writes on a piece of paper and posts it. She flips it around and pushes it to me, asking me to accept. Yes, I remember. It was sweet. Hollywood legend, silver screen lover, and mysterious disappearance. You know Richard Gere from Pretty Woman, the man with a glance that needed no speech and a grin that never felt forced, and a stillness that could silence a screen. For nearly 3 decades, he was the epitome of elegance in film and life. Richard Gere left Hollywood while still being sought after. He declined blockbusters, skipped red carpets, and disappeared. Why? What makes a famous star become silent? Walk away from what millions want? Could one sentence have banned him from the Oscars for 20 years? Did the curiously lovely relationships always end in silent goodbyes? Or was it something deeper that meant he never belonged in that world? No one expected the third reason. The lady who changed Richard Gere's life had a surprising background. Early life Richard Gere spent his entire life searching for a way to be himself, even at great expense. The second of 5 children, Richard Tiffany Gere was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, on August 31st, 1949. Doris Gere was a housewife and Homer Gere an insurance salesman. After moving to upstate New York as a child, Richard grew up in the 1950s American middle class, disciplined, frugal, and educated. Richard Gere's calm childhood developed his sensitive soul and quick brain. He immediately distinguished himself in North Syracuse Central High School with his many talents. Gere played piano, guitar, bass, and trumpet, composed for school musicals, and was engaged in student government. His lacrosse and gymnastics skills earned him a collegiate sports scholarship. In 1967, Gere studied philosophy at the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. He quit after 2 years to pursue the arts. First music, then rapidly switching to acting and theater. It went against his family's wishes, yet reflected his long-standing philosophy of not following others' rules. His unique combination of intellectual thought, athletic discipline, and musical feeling gave him a deeper inner viewpoint than most of his classmates when he entered the realm of performing. Early career. Richard Gere graduated from college and began performing on stage in 1973. He played the lead in Grease in London. Playing Danny Zuko propelled him to the West End and introduced spectators to a performer who could sing, act, and command the stage. Due to his high school musical experience, where he created and played numerous instruments, Gere continued to hone his craft in subsequent productions, including Taming of the Shrew, where he tested his Shakespeare skills, and Bent, a bold play about homosexual love in a concentration camp, demonstrating his artistic daring even in his early career. His cinematic debut was a 1977 supporting part in Looking for Mr. Goodbar. Directors liked his gruff, threatening, and captivating film presence despite the little role. A year later, he played the lead in Terrence Malick's Days of Heaven, 1978, a cinematic classic known for its magnificent sights and languid, poetic cadence. Gere's gaze and quiet presence produced a lasting impression despite minimal conversation. American Gigolo, a controversial 1980 film, propelled Richard Gere to celebrity. Julian Kay, an elite male escort, was dangerous, alluring, and psychologically complicated, redefining the early 1980s Hollywood sex icon as masculine, mysterious, and subtly tormenting. The combination of stage discipline and cinematic sensibility allowed Richard Gere to create a modest but determined approach. He didn't require box office hits or overacting. One glimpse told the audience this persona will be remembered. Career success. An Officer and Gentleman made a star a legend in 1982. Gere showed his emotional range as Officer Zach Mayo, a scarred, stubborn man willing to change for love and honor. One of the most classic scenes in cinema is when he carries Deborah Winger out of the factory amid cheering and amazed looks. The film was a box office hit and won 2 Oscars, cementing Richard Gere's status as a new emotional icon. He reached his peak when he met Julia Roberts. Pretty Woman, 1990, about a frigid businessman and a vibrant sex prostitute, may have been a B-movie without the chemical alchemy between its characters. Gere didn't pander. He sat still and watched Julia laugh. Its $460 million worldwide hit didn't simply make Julia Hollywood's new sweetheart. It made Richard Gere one of the most beloved romantic leads ever. He continued to build his reputation with successful films in the 1990s and 2000s. A victorious Julia Roberts reunion occurred in 1999's Runaway Bride. He earned a Golden Globe and worked on Chicago 2002, which won Best Picture. Shall We Dance? 2004 showed a more affable, down-to-earth Gere as a middle-aged husband rediscovering his enthusiasm for life. And Arbitrage, 2012, showed his dramatic depth as a successful split between morals and ambition. Nos Grandes never chase superheroes or CGI blockbusters. Gere let his star power evolve rather than clinging to it. He was one of Hollywood's most compelling and irreplaceable actors for 30 years. Each appearance revealed a new guy. More mature, guarded, but still intriguing. The most attractive thing about Richard Gere was never his face. The smile hides life experience. Personal life. Success began early. Fame shined. With one of Hollywood's most compelling faces, Richard Gere became millions of women's ideal guy. The press also focused on his private life due to that image. Richard Gere, the perfect lover on screen, was a mystery in real life. Complex, multi-layered, difficult to comprehend. Richard Gere's first significant relationship was with Penelope Milford in 1971. Penelope witnessed his rise from mediocrity to fame in 7 peaceful, unpublicized years. They battled job setbacks and self-doubt in a small New York apartment. Gere rose to stardom in the late 1970s after their split, and his relationships shortened. Tuesday Weld, an independent cinema actress, cautioned him that stardom will swallow your emotions. Barbara Carrera, a Nicaraguan actress, appeared beside him as American Gigolo, made him Hollywood's newest sex symbol. Though none of these partnerships were confirmed, standing next to him was enough to get a woman's attention back then. The longest and most significant connection of that time was with a little-known name, Silvia Martins, Brazilian painter. Their relationship lasted from 1978 till 1986. Gere became a superstar, but also turned inward, seeking a more meaningful identity. Silvia was more than companion, spiritual partner, traveling with him to Tibet, visiting meditation retreats, and supporting him during silent soul-searching as he inquired, "Who am I without the spotlight?" Gere steadily ended his relationships as his spiritual path progressed without scandal. They never made headlines, but left a deep, true connection, difficult to eradicate. During his existential crisis, a woman entered his life. Barbra Streisand, a legend, not a budding star. In the early 1980s, Streisand was the unassailable queen of Hollywood with an Oscar, Grammy, Emmy, and complete control over her image. And Gere had become a new sex symbol with American Gigolo. Rumors about them flourished. One reached fame's height. The other lived there for decades. The newspapers termed it a galaxy collision. Both the 6-year age gap and the rumor that Barbara pursued Gere startled the public. It was never confirmed. But red carpet stares, discreetly snapped intimate meetings, and long silences from both sides increased the suspense. One liked bold charisma. The other impressed by unyielding independence. They split due to lifestyle and status discrepancies. He needed seclusion to discover himself. Streisand was made for fame. His departure was not due to a lack of affection, but because he wasn't ready to live in an uncontrollable environment. That relationship ended discreetly, but Richard Gere remained a mystery. Was he seeking a love that didn't need to shine, merely to run deep enough to help him escape? His popularity was reinforced by a vast series of rumors after Barbara. In Los Angeles, Elvis's wife Priscilla was seen with Gere. Also suggested were Lori Rodkin, Kim Basinger, Tina Chow, Delilah DeLazzaro, and Laura Bailey. These limited meetings suggested Gere wasn't ready for permanence. Although Gere never mentioned them, they were certainly memorable for him. After a series of brief romances, many overblown by the media, Richard Gere began his most serious and long-term relationship with Cindy Crawford, a girl 17 years his junior, but no less famous. They were called the 1990s Golden Couple. A 22-year-old supermodel on global magazine covers, a 39-year-old movie star rising from Pretty Woman. Richard Gere and Cindy Crawford met at a backyard barbecue thrown by photographer Herb Ritz in 1988. No one expected a pop culture-shaking love story. 3 years later, they married quietly in Las Vegas. No expensive gown, no Hollywood guest list, just two aluminum foil wedding rings. Gere and Crawford were the perfect combination at key events from 1991 to 1995, peaking at the 1991 Oscars, where Cindy's cold beauty and Gere's rough grace froze the world. The flash bulbs were followed by rumors of a show marriage. That Gere was gay and Crawford never loved him. The public pressure peaked in 1994 when the couple spent $30,000 on a full-page Times of London ad to deny the gossip. They wrote, "We are straight, monogamous, and deeply committed. We never intended to divorce. We are thrilled and excited to start a family." After listing their humanitarian causes, from human rights and AIDS research to LGBTQ+ rights, the commercial urged honesty, responsibility, and kindness. Behind the scenes, things were more complicated. Crawford told Vanity Fair in August 1994 that Gere recommended the commercial because he couldn't risk being perceived as a liar. At 28, she wondered, "Who am I in this relationship? I've changed to be the woman he needs, but am I still myself?" Gere also admitted it. Years later, he said, "I loved someone who didn't know who she was and hoped love would help her settle. It was unfair to anticipate." In 1995, they divorced. No scandal, no property disputes. Cindy was reclaiming herself, whereas Richard was used to public scrutiny. Her confession came on Oprah's Masterclass in 2013. "I was 22 and figuring myself out." However, doing that in a marriage with a fully formed guy was difficult. After divorce, they moved on discreetly. Gere wanted calm. Crawford and businessman Randall Gerber had 2 children. The 1991 red carpet photo of Richard Gere and Cindy Crawford softly holding hands is one of Hollywood's classic moments. Before the memories of that marriage faded, Richard Gere faced a new meaning of love, steady, like a quiet flame warming a long road. He met Carrie Lowell, a former model, actress, Bond girl, and Law & Order star, in 1995. Carrie was calm, enduring, and so close to Gere that it felt impossible to part, unlike his prior Hollywood-style relationships. 7 years after the birth of their son, Homer James Jigme Gere, the couple married in 2002. Richard raised organic veggies, read Buddhist classics, and only took on spiritual tasks on their quiet farm. His sedate, steady, and entire life appeared to be his genuine home to the outside world. Not all quiet is peaceful. Like someone who had formerly confidently navigated crowds and social events, Carrie felt out of place. Carrie wanted real-world interaction, discussion, and proximity while Gere meditated for hours. No conflict, no betrayal, just 2 people being brutally honest about themselves and progressively losing rhythm. They split in 2013 after 18 years together. The quiet legal struggle that lasted nearly 3 years and involved a $100 million inheritance startled the public, not their breakup. Gere, formerly considered the epitome of serenity, began appearing in court with a stern countenance, even waving a sharply tipped black umbrella at a camera, like a quick slice across the tranquil image of the gentle Buddhist he had nurtured for decades. He could no longer hide his eye strain. Caring for their son kept Carrie in their $4.5 million Bedford house. However, underlying it was a hidden but furious struggle over damaged space, emotions, and trust. Gere discreetly erased Carrie's charity flyer photo. Lowell did not yield, no longer wanted to talk. A dear friend remarked, "No one deceived anyone." Despite living together, they stopped understanding each other. The dispute was resolved. She didn't get the $100 million she wanted, but the situation ended quietly, just like love started. Richard Gere became more secretive after his 18-year marriage to Carrie Lowell ended. He started dating top chef anchor Padma Lakshmi in 2014, who was recovering from a divorce. A silent relationship developed. Public comments and collaborative events were avoided. Both protected their private lives like fragile things. They broke up after 6 months. Nobody fought. Different lifestyles and emotional requirements were cited. While Gere became more contemplative and sought a quiet life, Lakshmi stayed active in media and society. Richard Gere reunited with Alejandra Silva at her family's Positano Hotel in 2014. They met through family friends years previously. Alejandra was residing in Italy with her kid after her divorce, while Richard was also recovering. His daily flowers and handwritten letters were meant to show his willingness to walk with her if she would let him. Since they were 33 years apart, Alejandra hesitated, but Richard didn't rush. Despite living on different continents, they never missed more than 20 days together. Finally, she moved to New York with Richard. Martha Stewart offered the Geres a tall caramel cake when they were neighbors. Richard later requested the recipe after seeing it on TV. In April 2018, they performed a private Buddhist ceremony at Richard's Pound Ridge residence, attended by Tibetan monks. A month later, they held a tiny Cinco de Mayo wedding. Alejandra wore 2 unique gowns. She seemed like an experienced, independent lady starting a new chapter, not as a star's wife. The couple has 3 kids. Alejandra's son from marriage to millionaire Govind Friedland. Alexander, their firstborn, in 2019, and their youngest, James, in 2020. Homer, Richard's adult son from a previous marriage, joins the family. The entertainment industry does not define Alejandra. Rise Foundation, her nonprofit, fights Spanish homelessness. She said, "If I do something, I give it everything," after sleeping on the street to understand the homeless in 2015. "If I can't, I won't do it at all." She was raised in Madrid's upper class, educated at elite private schools, and had close ties with many Real Madrid footballers, including Roberto Carlos, whom she once dated. But what made her choose Richard was empathy, shared values, and the way he truly devoted time to both his family and humanitarian work. Together, they've supported many charitable initiatives, including the 2017 benefit screening of the dinner. Alejandra says what she treasures most in Richard is his humanity. She joined Richard and his son Homer at the Cannes Film Festival in 2024 for the premiere of O Canada. That same year in Venice, Richard bowed to his wife, a gesture of deep respect between 2 people who have walked a long road together. For Richard's 75th birthday, Alejandra wrote, "After 11 years together, it still feels like day one. The life we've built, the memories we've shared, it's more than I ever imagined." On her first Father's Day in Spain, she wrote to him, "Happy Father's Day to the father of the world." Speaking to El España in early 2025, Richard said simply, "We are happier than ever. My wife is someone who lives with deep gratitude. No spatlot." They choose to be together because they feel enough respect, enough patience, enough to keep going. Love helped him find peace. But Richard Gere's career wasn't always so serene. In one moment no one has forgotten: the fateful night of the Oscars, 1993. Richard Gere was never the type to stay silent. While many Hollywood stars chose to steer clear of politics to keep their careers clean, he did the opposite. During the live broadcast of the 1993 Academy Awards, while presenting the award for Best Art Direction, Gere unexpectedly deviated from the script to speak out on human rights in China, particularly the situation in Tibet. "I send love, truth, and a little sanity to Deng Xiaoping. Would you consider withdrawing all your troops from Tibet and letting those people live freely?" he said boldly, in front of over 1 billion viewers worldwide. The room fell silent. Not long after, Gere was banned from attending or presenting at any part of the Oscars for over 2 decades. And it wasn't just a symbolic ban. It marked the beginning of Richard Gere's gradual exclusion from the mainstream film industry. In a later interview with The Hollywood Reporter, he admitted, "I used to have movies released globally. Then suddenly no major studio wanted to work with me anymore. No one said it outright, but everyone knew why. Hollywood studios had become increasingly reliant on the Chinese market where government criticism is heavily censored. Gere wasn't just blacklisted. The films he appeared in were also denied distribution, causing his career to quietly slide out of the mainstream spotlight. Years later, at the 2025 Oscars, host Conan O'Brien even joked about the very incident, in Mandarin no less, during the live broadcast. "I'm drowning in debt. Please consider casting me in one of your many movies." That seemingly harmless joke once again reminded audiences of Richard Gere, the man who sacrificed his spotlight to stand by his convictions. He once told HuffPost, "It seems that if you stay long enough, they forget they ever banned you." But was that forgiveness? Or just Hollywood's selective silence? Can a single statement destroy a star's entire career, even when no laws were broken, no scandals committed? That question remains unanswered. But Richard Gere continues to live by the beliefs he once voiced. And while many choose safety, he chose freedom. The cost, an entire career stalled. And then, with his wounds from Hollywood still unhealed, a single kiss would ignite a firestorm of rage. In 2007, Richard Gere traveled to New Delhi to attend an HIV/AIDS awareness event. On stage in front of thousands, he embraced actress Shilpa Shetty, the Big Brother UK winner, and kissed her on the cheek several times as a friendly and Hollywood-style gesture. But the reaction was far from what he expected. Numerous nationalist and conservative groups in India erupted in outrage. They called the act disrespectful to Indian women, an insult to traditional culture, and offensive to public decency. Images of Gere were burned in the streets, posters were stomped on, and more than that, a state court issued a warrant for Richard Gere's arrest on charges of public obscenity. Even Shilpa Shetty, who was clearly the one being kissed, was taken to court. It wasn't until 2008 that India's Supreme Court dismissed the charges as baseless and revoked the warrant. But for Shilpa, full exoneration didn't come until 2022, a full 15 years later. When asked by the media about the incident, Gere simply replied, "I kissed her on the cheek." In the US, that's a polite gesture. In India, I learned a different lesson. As Hollywood gradually turned its back, Richard Gere didn't respond with lawsuits or media counterattacks. He gave no interviews, made no effort to reclaim his spotlight, and blamed no one. Instead, he withdrew deliberately. During that time, he devoted himself to meditation, long hikes, and a quiet life in the countryside of Pound Ridge, New York. In one of his rare public appearances, Gere said, "You'll hear what you need to hear." No longer favored by major studios, he turned to independent film. In Time Out of Mind, 2014, he played a homeless man isolated from society, reflecting his mental state, exiting the system without losing essence. These jobs didn't bring box office success, but they let him produce art without commercial pressure. His humanitarian effort was an inseparable part of him beyond movies. Gere covertly sponsored civil rights groups, African medical help, and most importantly, Tibetan aid. However, he avoided self-congratulation. No press conferences or awards programs. He said he kept me from meaninglessness. At an age when many indulge, he simplified. Vegan food, daily practice, meditation. To live more mindfully, not longer. He stated, "I don't care about returning to Hollywood. I care about my remaining wakeful time." Though his acting career was interrupted, his life was not. Sir Richard Gere retained his stature. He altered his existence. That shift may have been best for a man who has spent his life attempting to stay still. The world moves for reasons that often signify nothing. Influence and legacy. Richard Gere is more than a movie star. He shows that a leader may change and influence without compromising. In Hollywood, which values youth and noise, Gere went the other way. Reduce roles, live quietly, and say facts others avoid. He portrayed masculinity that wasn't based on muscles or a booming voice, but on reflection, gaze, and morally challenging roles throughout his career. Days of Heaven, American Gigolo, An Officer and a Gentleman, Pretty Woman, and Chicago were more than box office hits. They created a modern man who is alluring but fragile, confident but never dominant, strong but willing to retreat. His influence went beyond screen. One of the first American celebrities to openly support Tibet, Richard Gere was barred from the Oscars and shunned by major studios. He did not withdraw, but found new paths. Since 1999, the Richard Gere Foundation has supported hundreds of Asian, African, and U.S. charities that focus on human rights, mental health, HIV, AIDS, and homelessness. He does not offer talks in worldwide humanitarian work. He acts. He is not a Buddhist symbol. He practices. A generation of fans see Richard Gere as a serene, heartfelt artist. His effect isn't a result of trying. It comes from holding on to himself when the world sought to change him. Current life. Richard Gere is enjoying his long-awaited peace after moving to Madrid with his family in late 2024. In an interview with El País Seminole, he said his wife, Alejandra Silva, loves being near her family in Spain. Their sons, Alexander, 6, and James, 5, attend local schools and participate in HOGA-RC and Open Arms. They speak Spanish and English. To raise awareness for refugees and medical patients across Europe, Richard and Alejandra uploaded a rare family photo on social media in May 2025 wearing Open Arms sweatshirts. Gere and his son, Homer, 25, attended the City Harvest Gala in New York, which raised nearly 8.5 million meals for the needy. He told them, "I'm always happy with my son, and being here tonight makes me proud." Beyond their personal journey, Gere and Alejandra launched the Gere Foundation's new website, which lists their social activities, from refugee rights and homelessness prevention to global peace building. They reaffirmed their mission in a statement. "We're here for the hurting and forgotten." Finally, in 2025, during the Dalai Lama's 90th birthday ceremony in Dharamsala, Gere pledged to continue the Tibetan movement's cultural and spiritual legacy after his spiritual mentor died. Richard Gere became famous without noise. He lived each chapter with uncommon quiet, as if he knew that fame is not what matters, but how one lives and loves. You may have liked his charisma, or you may only recall a grin that made your heart skip a beat. However, Richard Gere has left an imprint on many people's recollections. Do you recall your first Richard Gere film? Which role kept him in your heart for years? Comment your ideas below. If you want to join us in exploring the icons who once meant the world, like subscribe and tap the bell.